everyone, David here, and this weekend celebrates the 25th anniversary of the Jocasta album, No Coincidence. I was very fortunate this past coming weeks to have with me Tim Arnold, the singer from Jocasta, on the channel, and I had a great chat. So this is Tim Arnold from Jocasta. So hi everyone, welcome to this video for the Britpop Buzz channel. With me this evening I have Tim Arnold, the lead singer from 90s band Jocasta. I've got a picture of him here behind me on the wall, making a nice impression. You always seem to have these sunglasses on, Tim, all the time back then.
Yeah, he certainly did, yeah.
So, where are you from, Tim, and how did the band come together?
Oh, goodness. I mean, I'm from London originally, although by the time I started the band when I was 16 or 17, where was I living? I was living just outside London, in Hertfordshire. And so the band was put together really in Hertfordshire. And then eventually I moved back to London. And so did the rest of the band as well, yeah. So we were a London band, I suppose.
How did you decide on the name Jocasta? Where did that come from?
It was Jocasta was in a poem that I'd written, as I recall it, said something about a Jacastering witch, and the guitarist in the band, Jack, we were at school together, and he went through my book of poems and when we were looking for a name for the band, and said, "What about Jocasta?" So it wasn't actually not my idea, but I certainly agreed with him, and we thought a woman's name was a nice touch. We'd both been studying Greek mythology, I think, that particular term. Yeah, bit of a giveaway.
I suppose that's nice when you've got that connection with people and you can talk about things, and it's not all just one person coming up with all the ideas and got influences and that.
Yeah, very much.
What were your musical? Did you have any musical influence? Where did your musical influence come from? Was it all based from yourself, or was it a collective?
On the songwriting, obviously. I mean, the influences are mine because I wrote the songs on my own. But certainly the style of the band was influences were with everybody in the band. My own influences always have started with John Lennon, Beatles, Pixies, Smashing Pumpkins, Nirvana a bit, and quite a lot of Ray Davies as well. So as a writer, those were my influences, and as a sort of the palette of sound that I wanted my songs to sound like. I mean, I lyrically, I was kind of with the Brits, with Ray Davies and Lennon and McCartney and all that sort of stuff. But I really loved Smashing Pumpkins. Were my favourite band when I was sort of 16, 17, 18, when I started with Jocasta. So that was the sound I was looking for. And Jane's Addiction as well. And I think, I can't speak for the others obviously, but I think Jack and I had quite similar tastes in that sense. He introduced me actually really to all the great American bands that I'd never heard of when I joined his school, so he kind of got me into Sonic Youth and the Red House Painters, the Pixies. First time I'd ever heard the Pixies. So yeah, I owed a lot of my stylistic influence in Jocasta to Jack, very much. With Adrian, our drummer, he was really responsible for getting me into artists like Marvin Gaye, bands like Tower of Power, Omar, Jamiroquai, and so I got a lot of the soul and funk, and I got a lot better at rhythm after Adrian kind of got me into that side of things. So there was a lot of influences going on in the band.
I mean, it's different to what I've spoke to other people about who have always said they've just been like, oh, we was trying to be like David Bowie or Suede. It's nice to have you've been different. You're singing like Pixies and Smashing Pumpkins. That's I'm used to hearing David Bowie and Suede a lot, and then it's nice to
Yeah,
hear someone who has different
Suede were
influences.
actually my favourite
Now
band
what?
in the 90s. And I think Jocasta went through an early phase, which sounded like I'd been listening to a lot of Suede, but eventually we found our own sound. But yeah, um, yeah, I wasn't with the lot. There was a lot of the glam stuff that came through, largely because of Suede, I think, and the rediscovery of Bowie's early '70s stuff in the '90s, and certainly with the clothing as well. But I think we didn't follow that. I'd never listened, and some people will be upset about me saying it, but I didn't grow up listening to the Smiths. I was too young, really. So all the bands, it seemed everybody in the Britpop era, not in 1992 to 97 for me, it all seemed to be, and all the bands were much older than me, so I was kind of a bit wide-eyed and listening to people like Elastica, Sleeper, Blur, um, and everyone was referencing the Smiths, and everyone was referencing uh, these fantastic bands, but they didn't mean very. Didn't resonate with me, um, and I think that was when we found that Radiohead were the band that we felt like, oh yeah, we sort of feel comfortable with them. So how we ended up under the sort of Britpop banner, I don't know really, because there wasn't a lot of waving of Union Jacks from Jocasta.
No.
It's quite, and the American influence was huge as well. Um, but I think that happens to any bands, especially if you're from London in the 90s.
Yeah, I think if you was from London at the time, you just got that label thrown at you
Yeah,
just then.
totally. But it was, it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to be, and the privilege to be inside the one of the, I think, greatest eras in British popular culture. I mean, I was a little bit too young. I wish sometimes I'd been a bit older, but yeah, that was an amazing time to be in London, meeting the kind of people that we were playing with.
Oh, I can imagine it was a great time to be in London. What were the early days of Jocasta like? Did you have many people come to your shows? Did you play any covers?
Yes, I mean the very early days were in Hertfordshire, and it was school created, and so we had a lot of school friends coming to support us, and a lot of that at first was in Hemel Hempstead, but we quickly sort of migrated into London and started doing gigs at the Mean Fiddler, which was then in Harlesden,
Oh yeah,
probably 92, 93, maybe. And there was a thing about bringing people to London. If you lived outside of London, it was kind of a thing. I don't think we did it, but a lot of bands arranged coaches and got all their local fans on the coaches and brought them to London.
right.
And you had to, because there was this kind of, you had to get a minimum amount of people, otherwise you wouldn't get paid, and there's all this kind of, it was a game. It was a game, and so by the time we'd started doing that, we were playing. We When we moved to London, obviously, we started playing the Splash Club, the Orange in Kensington. I can't think of any other names at the moment, but we seem to have a really amazing following. And I don't. It wasn't down. I was down to my songs, I suppose, but it wasn't me. I didn't know a lot of people. Jack, our guitarist, was really popular. He had loads of friends, and Adrian and Andy. were a little bit older, and so they seem to have a lot of very keen friends and supporters. So yeah, I was quite lucky, really, being I was the youngest in the band. I was the front man and the writer, but I wasn't a big social person at that point. So yeah, I mean, I think we had a massive guest list. It was a stupid sort of 300 people outside going down the Gray's Inn Road in 1994,
Wow.
whenever it was, and um, 94, 95, and yeah, we had a great support from people. I was amazed because I didn't know most of them. Um, so yeah, really a lovely way to begin, and that's of course when record labels and all that sort of stuff, as they were in those days,
Yeah,
started
definitely.
noticing.
I'm glad you've mentioned the record label. Now, moving, please correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, but am I right in saying that you was first signed to an American record label before you was here in the UK?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, that you could put it like that. Actually, what it was we were being courted by one little Indian, because our dear friend at the time, Rick Lennox, was an A&R guy there, and he loved us, and he also had silly hair like me, so and and he really started a ball rolling with, once one label finds out about a band in those days, as other people start going, oh, who are they? And so I think One Little Indian had a relationship with Sony in the UK, and Sony in the UK obviously had a relationship with Sony America. And so we did a showcase for One Little Indian, which Sony UK came to,
Yeah.
and then they invited Sony America as well. And I think the way it went was that Sir David Massey at Epic, who was the VP at Sony in the States then, was like, well, if you sign them, we'll do them here. It was that sort of thing. He loved the strings and all that sort of stuff, the kind of crossover between the classical and the rock. And I sort of remember all these conversations going on with our manager at Snomi's studios in Shepherd's Bush. And so we got signed by Sony UK because One Little Indian invited Sony UK as part of their
Right.
setup. And but we didn't end up with One Little Indian. And I sometimes wonder what would have happened. I mean, that you take the path you take. It certainly wasn't really in my hands. I just trusted the
Yeah.
management. I think if probably without a manager, we
All
probably
right.
would have
Yeah.
just ended up with One Little Indian. But yeah, so it wasn't that we ended up
One
with
Little
him. We
Indian.
got
Yeah.
signed by the American label, but we were heavily taken out to dinner a lot by the American label for sure. All those sort of posh dinners and stuff, which I don't know if that happens anymore. I guess it does. Maybe not for rock bands, but
Oh, wow.
we were wined and dined a fair bit. Yeah.
Oh, what more could you want? Your free meals.
Absolutely. At 19, and I'd been, before coming back to England, I've been living in the mountains with sort of goats and stuff in Spain. So I was, it's quite cool when you're 19 to be taken out to the Groucho Club or whatever, and be bought dinner. And yeah, I was,
Treated.
yeah, I was probably more impressed than I should have been, but it was fun.
It was, yeah. Now, did you have a special routine for writing songs, Tim? I mean, your most well-known song, I think, is "Go." Do you remember when you exactly wrote it? When was the time?
Um, I do. I do. I wrote it, I think I wrote it in 94. So it'd have been 18 or 19. And I used to live, I lived in I lived in Soho, opposite St Martin's School of Art, because I was I had a place to do fine art at St Martin's, and the rest of the band lived in Shepherd's Bush. So the central line from Tottenham Court Road to Shepherd's Bush was where quite a lot of the Jocasta songs were written. As I would go to see Adrian and Andy, who shared a flat. Um, and then later Jack, I think, moved into West London. But Go was sort of half written at their place on a couch full of people as they were in the 90s, sort of hungover and lying about on couches drinking tea and having toast. And then on the way back home to Soho on the tube. So it was sort of written in those two places.
What, just
Yeah.
on your knees, just going along?
I always wrote songs when I was out and I was sitting with either the band or friends, and then whenever I got home, I just remember this from the time, just literally finishing songs, walking down Charing Cross Road, coming out of Tottenham Court Road tube station, past the Astoria, finishing a song, getting into my flat at Phoenix House, like getting through the door and turning the 4-track on and going, right, let's get this down quickly, you know. And that was pretty much most of the Jocasta songs written during that time, and then some of them just in my flat, obviously.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that. There's different. You're writing the songs, then you're rushing down to make sure you don't forget them. I like that.
Yeah, I think that helps sometimes. I think when it's when you're under pressure, or you haven't got time, I think that can help. I think too much time, too much freedom, and can sometimes make it a bit harder to nail something.
Yeah. Well, we saw that with. I might be upset a few people here, but we saw that when Oasis brought out their third album.
Yep, you could say that.
After the first release single, you released "Go and Change Me," and that was in 1996. But then they got re-released again. How did you feel about that when they was being re-released again and they had different B-sides on them? Did you have to re-record new B-side songs to go with the re-releases, or?
Yeah, I mean, I at the time I was so naive. I didn't really understand anything to do. I didn't understand capitalism, let alone record companies. And Of course, it took me a decade, but I figured out they're pretty much the same thing. uh, uh, but I don't remember feeling anything like I would do now. I mean, because of um, you know, doing what I've done with my solo albums, I'd never release something twice. I think that's sacrilege.
Yeah,
It's mental. If that's how many
yeah.
people heard it the first
It
time.
was definitely a strange time for songs being out one year and then being out again a year later.
Yes, major labels are sort of revolve around the idea of selling something, the same thing, again and again and again and again, without having to invest any more money. So, which is, I think, is every corporation, really, isn't it? I didn't really think about the records that they were putting out again. I think I had a moment of why they're doing that, but I think at that time I was just really I reveled in attention um, from the
Yeah.
label or anybody
Okay.
else.
Yeah.
I was whatever 20.
Yeah.
I just thought, you know, if they're working on it and they're going to get it out onto radio, yeah. And in fact, it was Joe Wiley's husband um, was the radio plugger. There was a lot of kind of we'll get this on the B list or the A list or whatever, you know, on Radio One.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, but Steve Lamacq played it last time. It was pretty cool. But they were kind of, it all seemed to be really important to Sony that it was on radio and TV and blah. So, you know, you just kind of go with that. But
Yeah,
now I see it for what it is, which is that's a corporation that are spending large amounts of money, and they don't want to spend more money until they've like milked the products that they've
makes
created.
milk the cash cow. Yeah.
So yeah. Having said that, the B sides I loved, and I loved making, and I found that as a band we were more collaborative with the B sides because I had to write the songs very quickly, and so I didn't have the time I usually
Yeah.
had to arrange and sort of suggest a style to the band. So the B sides of the '97 the singles that came out, "Go and Change Me," um, and "Something to Say" actually, which was in '96, I think. I find those to be much more closer to the band in terms of how we were in the rehearsal room and on tour, you know, live. The album is yeah, a bit more
Yeah.
like, you know, the lead singer's vision, which happens, you know, if you're playing at being
Yes. Yeah, I
Billy
get you.
Billy Corgan or whatever, whoever, and at 19, ridiculously, I was allowed to do that with the London Symphony Orchestra. But you know, the songs were good, so the songs were deserving. Not sure I was, but the songs definitely were. But yeah, I loved the
Oh
B
yeah,
sides.
definitely.
I loved the B sides because that was kind of the band sound, and they came up with it was equally
Cool. Yeah, the songs
motivating.
definitely deserve, and I love the songs.
Thank you.
When it came to the artwork, Tim, for the singles and the how involved were you? Because the album artwork and the single artwork all seem to have a theme going on, and they all sort of go together. That liquidy form, water form, the man and woman on the album, and there's water and them and them. But then, compared to other albums that came out at the time, you look at the album and the singles. There's just nothing to connect them. If you look pick them together, you maybe won't recognize the same band. But for yours, put all three together, you can tell there's a running theme through the what's going on in the artwork.
Well, the artwork for Jacaster was very much inspired by the generic artwork that Suede did with the first album. You know, whether it was the Drowners, Metal Mickey, Animal Nitrate, and the album, it was like same logo, same artist, same kind of white backdrop with these sort of slightly rotoscoped images, and I loved that.
Yeah,
If it just felt like a collection of artifacts that belong together, and it meant you really had something missing if you didn't have all of them. You know, I had all the CD singles of the Suede stuff, so that was as really as the only concern I had when Sony talked to us about the artwork. I think perhaps the rest of the band, not Jack, he was very involved in sort of approving things. I can't remember. I might be wrong, but it felt like yeah, let Tim kind of get on with that probably, or I might have been just like yeah, I want to be involved in that. I can't remember, but that was all that concerned me. And the other thing that concerned me was that it had to have uh, a certain kind of iconic singular image, like as he puts his hands together in a pyramid. That will get us loads of attention with the sort of Illuminati followers now, wouldn't it? But like Dark Side of the Moon, you know, that singular image that was in the middle of darkness. And I wanted something like that, but I didn't really have an idea. And the product manager at Sony introduced me to an artist and a design company, and they came up with those ideas. They were not my ideas, but I liked them, and
cool.
they represented more of the love songs on the Jacaster album, which I like because none of those really came out as singles. Something to Say a little bit, but things like Perfect, Face You, Single as Hell, um, those tracks which were very much to do with relationships, had never really been
Yeah,
represented, and so it was really lovely to have that side of the album represented in the artwork, and through all of the, I think with Change Me, wasn't it, and Go, the '97 re-releases. Yeah.
that's nice. That's nice to hear that. That's what you was aiming for. That's what you was going for. I have done a little bit of digging, and in an interview for Surrey University that you did in early 1997, and I quote, you said, and this is a quote, you said that you had written and demo recorded the whole next album. Now, was this a second Jocasta album, or was this something else completely at this time? I wonder if you could remember.
I do remember, yeah. It's I did demo the what I thought would be the second album, and that still exists. It's on a DAT tape, but it's only me, and it's all sort of the synthetic instruments.
Right.
Uh, and I'd say there are several of those songs ended up on my second solo album, which is called En Route. And some of the music ended up on my album, which was probably the most successful album I've had since Jocasta, Sonnet 155. So the demo album still exists, but I don't know if I'd ever release that
Yeah.
because I would release my demos now, but that was me demoing when I was 21, and I don't know. I feel that some things are in the process of writing and creating are better left to the creator. Yeah, Sony has them, that's for sure. Yeah, and I don't think they like them because it wasn't the band. And to be honest, I quickly gone in a different direction. I think if we had stayed with Sony, then we probably, and if with the band had stayed together, we wouldn't have made that record that I made. I jumped forward a little bit from, I don't know, early Genesis to all the way to sort of far out solo Peter Gabriel. It was a bit. It was a bit. It was a bit. Yeah, but I wasn't really paying attention to what we were in the marketplace. I didn't even know what a marketplace was when I was in Jocasta. I didn't understand it. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, but it's true though. I did. It's 14 tracks that I demoed. And to be fair, the band
Right.
liked some of them, but they were very keen to make it sound like Jocasta because it didn't. Yeah. But
Uh-huh.
if you're
So
if
yeah,
anyone's
the band wanted
interested,
to.
yeah, if anyone's interested to hear what some of the music was, then check out the solo albums En Route and Sonnet 155 because that's got bits of
On route to Split
what was
155.
what was meant to be some of Jacaster's next
What
album.
you wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Well, what what song are you most proud of writing, Tim? And is there any song written by someone else from that time that you wish you had written?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, the songs that I'm most proud of writing myself would be uh, "What Love Would Want," which is a song I released in 2017 for to raise awareness about love and inclusivity. It's something I did to support Amnesty International's "Love is a Human Right"
Yeah.
campaign. So it's very much to do with the LGBT community. Um, and that, as a song that's very simple melodically and lyrically, which I wrote from the perspective of my 8-year-old self growing up with two gay, mums. Um, I've yeah, probably most proud of that. Um, and Laughing by Jocasta. I mean, that song still. I remember writing it note for note when I was 17, and I still wonder if or I'll ever do it where it was meant to be done. You know, that if you close your eyes and you listen to Laughing, and the piano starts, that was like a pianist on a grand piano at the Albert Hall, and then the curtain came up, and there was a rock band behind, you know, and the drums, and you'd be like, oh, okay, it's not a classical concert, and then the strings would come in and you go, yes, it is, and then the drums would get louder. It was like, oh, we don't know what it is. That was what was happening in my head when I wrote Laughing, and I went and played it to Adrian, who's the drummer in Jocasta, and it was him that said, oh, we've got to get the band back together. I can get a deal with this, you know. So he really was the driving energy. So and the song, whatever the combination of my imagination at the time of what music could be, and the other members in their like support of me and their enthusiasm and drive, because I didn't know anybody in the music industry really when I was 17. I had no idea, but he'd been working already. So that song sums up so much to do with my beginning life in music and making friends with people that I was making it with. And I think it's one of the best compositions I've ever done as well. So those are the two, I think, that I'm most proud of. But your second question, what a song that's not written by me, that's written by somebody else from that period? There are a few. I loved Wide Open Space by Manson. Um,
Nice choice. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
I absolutely adored that, and we played with them a couple of times in Europe, and I couldn't write something. When I say simple, I mean that as a deep compliment to simplicity. In chord structure and patterns, and that song is. But what he does, the performance and the production around that simple idea was just. I was really in awe of it, and it was a little bit at the time. It felt like he was so much older than me. He's only a couple of years older than me, I think. Paul Draper, and. And I it wasn't like I wished I'd written it, but now I do. I sort of think, God, I wish I'd been able to do something that just cut through everything. It was wonderful, and it was leaning a bit closer to the Tears for Fears, much more polished '80s production, which I always wanted to go towards. But there was a kind of feeling it's the '90s, and it must be raw.
Yeah.
And our management was very keen that things didn't get too polished, as were some of the band as well. Um,
Yeah.
I'd love to have come up with Wide Open Space by Paul Draper, by Manson. I'm not sure what the writing credit is on that, but brilliant. And
Yeah.
and I'd probably say something do you mean specifically Britpop era songs like from the bands that we were around with at that time?
No, no, no. Feel free if you said no.
Um,
No, if you've got another one, you've.
I would have loved to have written Cornflake Girl by Tori Amos. I just think that's phenomenal. Really beautiful, genius,
Right.
raw, unusual, and then it became a hit. I guess some things in those days became popular with a lot of people, i.e., hit, that just doesn't happen anymore. And so, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'd be happy writing half of Tori Amos's songs. I mean, she's just, I adore her work. Yeah, yeah. But no, I mean,
Yeah.
with the
I've just
bands
made a note of that
around
now.
us, pardon?
I'm just making a note of that now to go and listen to later on. Just wrote
Yeah,
that
have a
down.
listen to it. It's great. And I think, yeah, most of the bands, guitar bands that we were around with and playing with or touring with, they weren't. I wasn't into the kind of stuff that they were into that much.
Yeah,
Um, the Maliks, when they got to uh, Everything Must Go, that was not before. I wasn't so into the Maliks, but when they did Everything Must Go, it was like, whoa, that's a design for life. That was like, that was a game changer. I just thought, Jesus,
yeah.
that's proper. Um, Live Forever is by Oasis is still, I think, the song that you can't argue with. And I'm not an Oasis fan, but as a writer, I think you can't argue with Live Forever. I think that's a beautiful and seminal moment where music meaning and the era really were captured. And thank God that they were sort of, uh, bought up by Sony. Creation was sort of bought up by Sony at that time. Otherwise, more enough people wouldn't have heard that song. So, for all the indie nonsense that we all went on about, Sony made Britpop. They were behind Suede, Oasis, Primal Scream, everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, uh, there were so many great songs from that era.
Go back and revisit any gig or moment throughout your whole career, what would it be? Or if there's something you felt you've missed, what would you want to go and see?
Another band, not one of my gigs, you mean?
No, not one of your gigs, something else.
Yeah,
Anything you feel, oh, I wish I'd seen that, or I wish I'd not gone to see that.
Gosh, there's loads. I'm trying to think what. I'm sure there's a gig I missed that I should not have missed. Probably a few, but there's. I would love to go back to the Radiohead show I saw in '97. I think at the Brixton Academy. 96 or 97, it was around the time of OK Computer, might have been just before. Michael Stipe was there. We were backstage. We had backstage passes, and Michael Stipe was sitting in the middle of the sort of back part after show party, and that that was an unbelievable gig. I'd only ever seen them probably on Jules Holland and stuff like that. We can get close-ups of Johnny Greenwood and you go, he's playing with a one pence piece. It's like, oh God, let's try that. When we were still at school. So to be then suddenly, our sound engineer for Jacaster was Radiohead's sound engineer, Jim Warren, who obviously he produced High and Dry as well. Giant talent of sound, and he stayed on with me for many years working on all my solo stuff. But he just said, "Come down to the show," and we loved Radiohead's records, but I had not seen them live, and it just blew me away. I don't really know of any other British band that ticks all the boxes that I'd like to have ticked personally. There's loads of great bands, of course, over the last 25 years, but they just got it perfect for me. Everything live and on record, the style, the lyrics, the attitude, the production, and the reality that it's the relationship of five people making something that just wouldn't be the same if one of them wasn't there. So it was, that was. I don't know what date it was or anything.
Yeah.
Radiohead, Brixton Academy, 96 or 97. Would love to go back to that and just watch it again. Yeah. It's the first time I heard.
If you dig around, you might be able to find it on YouTube, I suppose.
Yeah, maybe it was the first time I heard "Paranoid Android," and the choral section at the end, which of course Tom sort of not lifted, but got from a famous classical piece of music that I've forgotten. But that was hearing that for the first time. I hadn't heard it on the record, so it was one of those times where you just thought, this is like, we're not just in Britpop and whatever it was called, something Britannia, all that sort of stuff. We're we're in an age of
Oh yeah.
really great music and great composers and great imagination. It was wonderful. That was a great time to be alive. I was 21. It's like, and it inspired you to go back in the studio and rethink what you're doing. Not in a kind of what we're doing is rubbish, but it was more like we can do more. You know, I think that's the beauty with bands
Yes.
like that. They give you permission to go. We don't need to follow what's going on. We can imagine and have a wider palette with what we're doing creatively. Yeah, that's the gig that did that for me.
Yeah. I can tell by just by watching you talk about it that you were really excited about it and you really enjoyed it, and
Yeah, I
how
want to
it
go back there.
wasn't the same as everything
I,
else.
I often time travel back there in my mind because I can remember how I felt at the gig, and yeah, it'll be great time travel that one.
Now, as well as Jocasta, you've had a solo career that's been going on years now, Tim. You've got solo albums and you're doing lots of things on stage at the minute. And when I see your pictures on Instagram and that, it looks like you're having a lot of fun. Is it fun, the things you do now? Or do you enjoy it a lot? Well, I'm asking if you enjoy. You must enjoy it, otherwise you won't do it, Tim.
Oh, I enjoy the creative process. I enjoy working um, with the other people that I work with. I'm not sure. There's not a lot. I don't have a lot of enjoyment with the commercial world anymore. I don't see that as a it's not a draw to me. He was when I was younger. It was like
No.
we got to be on top of the pops or whatever it was. Um, but
Was
um,
you ever on top of the pops? Can I just put in there? Was you ever on top of the pops?
not live. No, the
No.
clip of Change Me was in on something like that. Yeah, I think. But no,
Oh, that's
we
like a
never
real,
got
yeah.
to do Top of the Pops. Um,
Oh,
yeah, so I love working on each new album that I do, which is it's been it's just a way of life for me. I make albums. And people say, "What do you do?" I make albums,
mhm. Yeah.
and they say, "Have you had any hits?" I'm like, "Nope." But that's not why I make albums. I make albums because my name's Tim and I make albums.
And you
And
love it,
that's
and you love the music and the enjoyment you get from it.
Yeah, and I love the players that I work with. I've been so lucky
Yeah.
just playing with musicians that are so extraordinary that I guess without them over the last 20 odd years, I may have um, thought that I shouldn't be making albums. But because of the kind of musicians that play on my stuff, it's like, oh, well, okay, well, that guy's working with McCartney and that guy's working with Richard Ashcroft, and they'd like to work with me, and I've got half the amount of budget, if any. So there must be something good about what I'm doing, writing. So yeah, it's down to the musicians that I work with that where the joy comes, the deep joy with music.
Yeah.
Um, and also now visual stuff I've made all the music videos for my stuff for the last I don't know 10, 12 years. That is a lot of joy as well. So I love that whole process. So now it's one big kind of I write songs and the video at the same time in my head, and sometimes they turn into theatre shows, which is what I'm doing now with Super Connected, which will be my 24th album. And my partner Kate, who's a theatre maker, has helped me stage this in a very innovative way, which is multimedia. I mean, I'm performing, and there's a feature film, and I'm interacting with the film as well. So yeah, I'm getting to do all the things that I know Sony would not have allowed me to do. So
No,
yeah, I'm very
I
happy.
wouldn't have done. Just this is the last one, then, Tim. Now I'm going to go back to the interview you did for Surrey University,
Yeah.
and in that article, you said that your main ambition was by the time you are 30 is to not be able to hold all of your works in one hand in CD form. Do you feel you've achieved that now?
In one hand. Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah, I
that's
think you
good.
have. Yeah,
I have. I just suddenly thought of it, and yeah, they're not all on CD, But if they were, I would definitely not be able to hold them. They'd be like sort of like that. So.
I hope that.
Well, how old was I when I said that?
That was an article. It was in Surrey University in early '97.
Wow, so it's nearly 22. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh well. Well, I'll have to time travel to my 22 version of Tim and say we did it. We did it. It's all
Well done.
okay. Yeah, great. Thanks for reminding me of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's nice. It's nice. It's been strange times since the pandemic. A lot of up and downs for musicians. It's nice to look back sometimes and go, okay, got some things like ticked off a few dreams. That's good. Can't hold all the albums.
Yes.
Nice to be reminded of that. Yeah.
Nice. Well, no, that's been wonderful, Tim. I've enjoyed talking to you. It's been very
You
good.
too, David. Thanks very much.
Hi everyone. Thank you if you stuck around to the very end. I really appreciate it. And I just want to say thank you again to Tim for joining me on the channel. We had a great discussion and I really enjoyed it. So thank you very much, Tim. And I wish you all the best in all your future endeavours and your stage shows and everything. If you want to follow Twitter, Twitter. If you want to follow Tim on Twitter and Instagram, I'll put the links to his accounts in the description below. He's always posting lots of Jocasta things and about his own shows coming up. So please go and give Tim a follow on both Twitter and Instagram. And like I've already said, thank you so much for watching the channel, and I'll see you next time.